I'd completed my last painting, Meditation Upon Death, and that was the most challenging painting that I'd ever attempted, and it took years to develop. So now I wanted an idea for a new painting, a new concept, but if I was going to invest that much time and energy on a painting, it really had to be a concept or a painting that really excited me. Along the way, David Leffel, one of my art teachers, had always said, all ideas have to be distilled down to a single concept, and then all questions you have for that painting are answered within that concept. So I was looking for a concept for this painting. The months went by and they actually flowed into a year or two, and I progressed through a lot of different ideas. One of them was a plasma field in outer space. So that excited me, and I actually wrote the code for that and saw it on the screen. And I said, man, I really like that. That looks beautiful. But it didn't pass that threshold I was looking for the next painting. And then with all the tension in society and the anxiety, I wanted to do something quiet and tranquil. I started studying the Japanese Buddhist monks' artwork from the 14th and 15th centuries. So I experimented and I coded with it and I wrote some software for it. I saw it on the screen and I kept evolving it, but it too didn't pass that threshold, that magic, that excitement that I was looking for. And then I happened to stumble on this Millennium simulation. In this simulation, the camera is wandering through this three-dimensional space with all these different structures in the universe that I had no idea that existed. It was totally captivating. So I spent a few months coding that up and had it working, but on the screen it's flat, and it just lost the magic of moving through this three-dimensional space of the cosmos. It was just too static for me. I like to get up pre-dawn with a cup of coffee and sit and look out my back window at the lake there. And that morning, the lake was frozen and there were lines of cracks in the ice. I thought that's an outstanding abstract image. And after taking several pictures of it and a few days passed by, I said, no, it doesn't hold my attention, and I quickly moved on. So then I looped back to this idea of the brushwork that the Japanese monks did. And I coded up more brushwork, and it looked promising. And I think what was interesting to me was the challenge of programming the robot and its risk to make these exquisite brushstrokes. That was the idea that I was striving for. So a question is, where does the inspiration come from? It's really from following my passions, wherever those passions are taking me. And in my case, it's the fusion of all these things, robotics, art, science, technology, etc. And I might grope around for a little bit of time or even more, and then I just lock on to something that's exciting to me, and that's the inspiration. My studio is one of 14 in a row. Every Wednesday morning, a group of us would meet in my studio and we'd listen to one lecture, have a break, and listen to another lecture. And we did it for several years. During that time frame, we listened to a course by Professor William Klaas, and he described the 65 greatest paintings in the world. And he gave the history and the background for all these paintings, and his stories were mesmerizing. He had 5 things that made a painting great. The first one, it has to have impact. And then the second was, the painting has to be unique. And then for me, 2 really challenging ones was, it had to have emotional depth and also intellectual depth. And then the 5th one was, it had to have the artist's distinctive contribution. Given those 5 things, do any of these ideas fulfill each of these 5 objectives that I'm looking for in a new painting? And the answer was no. And so sometimes these ideas fall short, and I'm not discouraged. I just say, well, I'm going to just keep pushing forward, following my enthusiasm, and see where it leads me, keeping in mind that I want to have those attributes in this next painting. As I was evolving and passing through these different concepts for potential paintings, I happened to read this book called Einstein's Heroes, Imagining the World Through the Language of Mathematics. And I was captivated by Newton working on his physics, and he needs a new tool, so he invents calculus. And then later, electricity comes along and people are experimenting with iron filings and compasses and currents going through wires and stuff. And there's no theory on it. And Maxwell comes along and he says, I need a new tool. And so he expands calculus and adds differential equations. These great scientists created their own tools for what they needed. I was reading this book called The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, and a lot of it's to his son, and he loves to tell stories, but more he loves to invent languages and loves to study languages. A third component to my thinking was you can capture an entire symphony on a piece of paper. Given these three independent concepts, what if I could combine them? I had this crazy idea of combining them and see what happens. So I need a new tool, just like Newton and Maxwell. And what if I created my own language like Tolkien did? And then what if I created my own notation, just like a musical score? I wanted to add notes where each note would be expressed as a brushstroke. So I developed the first version of my language, and then every time I hit the run button, I saw the same thing. Just like every time you play an opus, you hear the same music. But I wanted something more exciting than that. I wanted some spontaneity, like different pianists would have a different interpretation. But the same thing happened as before.